Michael is, of course, one of the founding members of the Propeller Theatre Company, and is going to be giving his talk in the midst of a set of theirs, as you can see. Over 160 professional design credits to his name. I'm sure that's a figure that is growing continuously. I believe Michael is going to be talking a little bit about collaborative practice. So working with other disciplinarians, other artists in live performance, production work, the challenges, pitfalls, the creative trials, I'm sure, and the results of such a fantastic sort of working environment as well. I believe he's going to talk for about an hour and a quarter or so.
I'll try and keep it less, but...
and then we'll come in, guys, come in quick and sit at the front, please, if you can. Sit down towards the end. You even brought you some flowers, Michael, which is lovely. Yeah, that's for the end. I think that'll be... So talking for about an hour and a quarter or so on that way of working. And then, of course, there will be opportunity for a Q&A at the end that I urge you to take advantage of. Come on in, guys. Come on in quick. Come and sit at the front. We'll have a bit of a break in between the end of Michael's talk, Michael's lecture, and the Q&A, 5 minutes or so, just a comfort break. And I guess we should be wrapped up by probably half 3 or maybe 4:45, something like that.
Yeah, half 3 over the thought maybe.
Yeah,
test.
half 3 at the latest. Yes?
Some of us got a vocal lesson at 3.
At 3 o'clock? How many people does that involve?
I'll try and be fast.
Okay, let's get quick. Okay.
And get through it.
Okay, right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm on.
So I will pass over then to Michael. Very welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
So that was what was that to check in with you? 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
But it starts.
3 o'clock. Okay. I just want to find out a little bit more about you because it helps me during the talk. What disciplines do you come from? What subjects are you doing? A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You mean like biochemistry?
No.
Performing arts generally?
Yeah.
Anybody not from a performing arts area? What do you do? Fine applied arts. Art. Does that mean painting, sculpture, film? Making? A little bit? Animation. Okay, thank you. Any other subjects? Great, okay. That's very useful, thank you. So I'm going to talk about 2 productions. I'm afraid I'm going to read because otherwise I lose my way. I'm not an actor. I can't remember lines. I was an actor once. I forgot my lines and I froze on stage and it terrified me and that's why I didn't do it anymore. I know. But I found something else to do so I'm going to show you a bit of that. This is a quote from Mr. Hockney, David Hockney. You may recognize it. This is my perversion of that quote. Here goes. All the work I make is a means to an unknown end. You may recognize this statement as being close to David Hockney's. It's not actually David Hockney's, but it's close to it. And it was commenting on Damien Hirst's spot paintings not being hand-coloured as Hockney's Country Lane drawings. The work I contribute to is collaborative and ephemeral. When you see my work, you don't know for sure if it's mine or not. It may have started out as mine, but as soon as it's born, it's instantly absorbed into a collective effort. I give away my babies. Sometimes I even murder them. My work is offered to an audience as an experience in the moment and collected in the memory. I'm not an artist. I'm not sure I'm even a designer. I just try to contribute to a visual world that perhaps as many as 50 other people will contribute to. And that's not shirking my responsibilities, it's simply a reality. These people are actors, technicians, and other makers, and they're crucial, if not central, to both the design's realization and its relevance to the audience. I guess they're the context for my research. I distrust the word research. I recently left the University of the Arts London, where I was a researcher. But now I'd rather be more frank about my design practice, my craft. Craft is an underrated or even a dirty word in higher education, in some higher educational institutions. And likewise, I struggle to objectify and contextualize my work from any distance, just as you probably have to do in your studies. I lazily leave that for other people to do, critics for example, and it's shameless that I'd rather be talked about than do the talking. But I will have a stab at it later. As this illustration shows, I'm on my guard when it comes to more academic events like this one. There's a dangerous temptation to change my script, move the target, reinvent myself, take on a disguise, be a different character, or to perform. I feel like I'm a fake, maybe I'm a theatrical, but I hope you think I'm telling the truth. I'm not sure David was. Here's an image, it's David's. I doubt whether you've seen it before. I don't know, has anybody seen it before? Is it familiar? No. You might recognise the subject, not sure. I own it, or at least I paid for it, and it hangs on my living room wall. I'm looking after it. Nobody owns anything. Even if it was buried with me, to give me something to think about in the afterlife, Pharaoh-like, it could be dug up and passed on. Anyway, it's the only theatrical artifact that I've allowed myself out of my workroom. I like to pretend that life outside my studio is real, and I keep it hanging there as a conversation piece. I like to show it off, like that. I've got a piece of it, and it helps validate my life and my work somehow. It's a modest sketch. It's presumably part of the process of designing a ballet called Parade for the New York Met in the early 1980s. I think he coloured it in, but perhaps not. Who knows? He signed it, but I don't know why. It's a sketch, part of a bigger process, and I'll show you some of my sketches later. But I guess by signing it, he's convincing us that he's had a hand in it, his hand. I don't like the look of it much nowadays. It floats in a pretentious frame that I found in a flea market in Berlin that hints at the stucco proscenium arch that could have framed the final production. What he's done, though, reminds me that there's no shame in looking back to other artists for a talisman before making something your own. In this case, Picasso in 1917. David was looking for something, dare I say, researching, and then perhaps lost interest, or someone knocked at the door and he stopped work on it. Anyway, whatever happened, it didn't really find its way into the production. But if it had done, would David, in the interests of his artistic integrity, have stitched those plush red curtains? Would he have hung them on the track, sewn the loops, threaded the cord, hued himself, swagged them back and viewed his work from the wings? Most certainly not. There'd be an army of collaborators to realise this sketch in 3D and full scale. Who's there to animate it and inhabit it? throw light on it, and fill the auditorium with music. Not David, and neither should he be. So curtain up, what is David? Now that he's no longer centre stage, the artist. Is he the designer, the decorator? No. My point is, I don't care about the job description so much as the work, and that can take many hands joined with my hand. They are the hands of craftswomen and craftsmen. I enjoy the fact that my work is not made by the hand of the artist. Here is one of Picasso's designs for the original ballet. And I wonder what old Pablo would have called himself. What was he doing? Was he researching? Was he designing? On the left is a revival of that production. It's visually striking, it's mannered, and in that sense, Hockney carried through Picasso's spirit of the piece 60 years later. I like this quote, it's on my website. I call myself a production designer for the stage, and by production manager, designer, I mean that not only do I design the scenery and costumes, I work closely with the director to co-create a vision for a theatre production, sometimes for dance, but usually for drama. Nowadays, I mostly design Shakespeare plays and, with the Propeller Theatre Company, contribute towards the UK's Shakespeare industry. As I implied earlier, Shakespeare, or I didn't mention it, but Shakespeare gives me insights into 20th century human life. He also pays well after 400 years. And I'll be talking about two of my collaborative experiences, one working with Shakespeare and Edward Hall for the global touring Propeller Theatre Company, and the other with Liam Steele and the physical theatre company Stand Won't Dance. Edward Hall and I usually do all-male Shakespeare. We do it fast, often it's pretty wild, but always, with the aim of clarity. And I say we, because Ed and I put together a framework for others. We're often put in the odd firework. We give it to a group of badly behaved but incredibly versatile guys. Stand back and watch the sparks and shape the production from there. In the production of Comedy of Errors, in which the character Dr. Pinch is tortured, we had him run naked through the auditorium with a sparkler up his arse. And more of that production later, in fact a review of that as well. It's great fun, but it's also exacting and disciplined. We're inspired and excited by that creative cocktail, exacting and disciplined. Thankfully, so are the audiences. Propeller brings contemporary interpretations of Shakespeare's best plays to the widest possible audiences. And I say best because there are certainly some of his plays we wouldn't work with, not because of their lack of quality, but so much as their appropriateness for the company. Perhaps I should say they're not best for us. And building on nearly 2 decades of ambitious touring projects, the company aims to generate vivid, lucid productions by harnessing the creative experience of an established, that's a really important thing, it's an established community of theatre makers. The Propeller Ensemble celebrates the live experience as both a dynamic social event and an educational vehicle. And by doing that, through doing that, it has built a creative environment for actors, designers, and other theatre makers where artistic risks are safely taken and where all creators take responsibility for their part in the company's vision. This is how it works. Propeller tours 2 plays in repertoire on large-scale spaces in the UK, internationally, across crossing continents, crossing the country. It'll then produce a pocket production, 60-minute versions of the full-scale shows for young or festival audiences. And the Pocket Dream played here last night. Did anybody see it? Nobody saw it. Did somebody saw it? Okay. You saw the dress shows? Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Good. So you've got some idea of it. This means that our two-show production has 2 lots of scenery. While the company of 12 actors or more and 5 crew fly from continent to continent, one of the 2 sets of scenery that fills an articulated truck or sea container and is not being used in the next show moves on to anticipate the company's arrival. And the logistics of this enormous project over 9 months and more in preparation, costing many hundreds of thousands of pounds, is funded by the Arts Council, foundations, British Council, festival funding, along with ticket sales. And this is the usual recipe for funding a tour. Crowdfunding through traditional means, taxes and tickets. The work aims to impact on people who rarely go to the theatre, let alone to see Shakespeare. Coming up now is a review of our work. You won't find it in a newspaper or on a website. It's far too fragile. But it's why I do the work. There are references that are probably somewhat meaningless to you in the first part, but I'm going to read it all because it's beautifully crafted. Oh, where am I going? Backwards. Press too many buttons. Dear Propeller, most viscery. It's the moments around the text that get me, begrudgingly trudging through the rain for a pair of brown eyes, it's a reference to our Henry V. The terror of Scroop as he waits for execution, the suppressed fidgeting of Henry as he wades through Salic swamps towards the yes he needs. Of course, the sheep and the sparkler up the arse. Yeah, maybe. Portia's lipsticks, lip licks, Nerissa, card tricks, the casual violence to tame the shrew, and the slapstick gore of Richard's body bags. That's pretty much all of our productions in a nutshell. The fairies breathing in and out as one, always the music. But it's also the newness, the first timeness, that you have really done the workness of the text. For if you hide the crown even in your heart, there he will rake for it. I've never really heard that line before. It's interesting. A line I would assume belongs to Coriolanus rather than Henry, who's a little bit chummy, a little prone to touching in the night, whether you're Olivier's, Henry, or Branner's, or Propeller's. To come away from each production with a new regard for the text is an extra gift. The other gift, a treasure really, is to be allowed to know you as an ensemble, a troupe. I've spent happy hours rummaging in Shakespeare since adolescence, but it's only since discovering Propeller that I've understood what it would have meant to see the Chamberlain's Men, or the King's Men, or Kemp, or Burbage, or Tarleton. I love it when you're cast unexpectedly, and I love it that you're so versatile and profoundly good at doing your jobs, and that we're allowed to see all that. It's exciting how you recreate yourselves, like a football team. I'll come back to football. I love it. Your players move to Real Madrid or China, and your fans fear, oops, it's the end. But here you are next season, still Propeller, still winning the league, but with a holding midfielder and a striker. It's too odd though, when you turn up in Northern Broadsides, another company, or Swallows and Amazons, and you're wearing the wrong kit. This is a love letter, but it's also a thank you letter from a mummy whose endless task of counting ruse vests threatens to overwhelm all the other facets of herself. Through going to your shows, I have recourse to the world I used to inhabit. I can know it will still be there when the vests are counted. I feel for you. Your work is to summon the rough magic, but to have to do it every bloody evening at 7:30, whether or not you have a cold, when you don't want to be in bloody Sheffield, and you just want to be at home and not have to bother for a while, it must be a monumental task sometimes. Thank you for doing it and for giving of yourselves. I hope you won't mind me presuming a non-existing intimacy in order to thank you honestly, having Propeller as an illumination in an often dull manuscript of getting through the days. Thank you all for playing. I read that letter from time to time, just makes me feel better. We have a strong ethos. Firstly, we respect all the contributors' creative input into projects, and that is all those involved with making the work. Partners, the venues, the festivals, the educational establishments like your own, sponsors, etc., and of course the audiences. And secondly, we offer a rigorous approach to storytelling, textual clarity, and a performance style that tries to combine the epic with the intimate. I think it's not our belief in these principles that keep the company on track. It's because fundamentally we try our best to actually practice them. My other design work in the business at large is so often driven by the demands of a hierarchy. Not so with Propeller. It's more of a collective adventure. The term ensemble is often overused because its ethic isn't easy to pin down. There are probably as many definitions of the word as there are people who collaborate. Here are a few of them. All the performers are on stage all the time. The whole story is told by a chorus. All the performers have an equal voice in the rehearsal process. It's democratic. It's a collective. All the actors are paid the same. They're all valid. But here's one that probably sums up best our interpretation of the word ensemble. I've always been struck by the North American interpretation of the word to include everyone in the entire organisation, or that's an aspiration at least, from backstage technicians to box office. The whole production is greater than the sum of its parts. Collective authorship is the philosophical basis of the company and critical to the integrity of my design process. Discovering what an ensemble means for all of us, not only performers, but also a complete creative, technical and administrative team is central to it. The negative connotation of a collaboration being a conspiracy can be a useful one. It can possibly mean that any live show is an exclusive, perhaps even secretive, but hopefully not elitist experience. We are bucking against mass media and the anesthetic of hysterical, repetitive image making. Although, of course, the irony of theatre is that we will repeat this show every night. We aim to make a unique experience, and the audience will be, or at least feel, central to it. Here's Tam. Tam was in the show last night. This is a bit of an unusual photograph in that this was a way of announcing to audiences at the Old Vic that we were all male company. But in effect, what it does is show what's not seen on stage, which is guys looking like women. We try and avoid that, but it did its job at the time. The all-maleness of the theatre company is, of course, traditional. In Shakespeare's time, women's roles were played by specially trained boy actors. But its strengths, the strength of doing that continues to stimulate us. It makes a performance clearer for the audience, or at least the narrative, very often. And it's a game with very little chance of actual sexual chemistry, or at least heterosexual chemistry, at least. Our presentations of a man or woman are positioned simply as a conceptual layer in Shakespeare's narrative. Our audience is always reminded that the actors are very skillfully pretending. Pretense, which needs the audience to join in the game, means that the audience therefore becomes part of the ensemble if they understand how that pretense is happening before them. If the audiences accept our rules of pretense, then anything's possible. Leaps in faith, leaps in time, space, and conventional storytelling logic. So I have to design worlds in which this can happen fluidly. Performers are whoever the audience are prepared to accept they are, even that they're just being themselves, occasionally on stage. The question is, how far will the truth of a performance stretch? Shakespeare often unmasks an actor in the final scene of a story, mid-story, or sometimes in the middle of a sentence. Nothing's fixed, so the design can't be either. His characters speak directly to the audience, sharing hopes and fears. They're in jump time. We, as a company, explore these existential moments, not only with the single characters, but also with an ensemble, as a collective voice, a chorus, Greek-like. And my work is to help make the divisions between these layers of acting as clear for the audience as possible, or to help to do that, and to set some physical rules for the actors to make and sometimes break. For example, if the actors are not actively in the scene, they may be plucking a destroyed piano at the side, blowing into bottles, ringing a ship's bell, making wine glasses ring, panting or chanting together, being greater than the sum of its parts. And I make the space for this. Here's a trailer for Henry V, which I hope gives you some sense of the energy in a propeller production.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend to the brightest heaven of invention.
Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, with famine, sword, fire, crutch for employment.
Kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Fire answers fire, and through their paly flames each battle sees the other's umbered face. This day is called the Feast of Christmas. If we are not to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor.
Henry V doubled with Winter's Tale on the project. Propeller shows, particularly through the history plays, such as Henry V, how we tackle as a company Englishness, torn apart, confused, one moment happy with our lot, the next viewing ourselves through others' eyes, restless, not confident or coming to terms with our own shifting identity. Englishness. I personally recognize this crisis of confidence because it reflects my own. Having had a father who twice fled oppression, once from the Nazis, and then, when he thought it was safe to go back to Czechoslovakia in 1946, the communists. He was naturalized as British in the 1950s, but I think he always remained stateless. And I think I've inherited some of that instability in the notion that of assured nationhood, but equally a broad belief in the stability of the European Union. I sit on the shoreline, looking back through Shakespeare at the community I grew up in, but feel semi-detached from, as do many of this tiny island's inhabitants, established or migratory. I'm going to talk a little bit about technology, because mighty leaps have been made over the last decade or so in the production of lighting and sound, particularly video projection for live events. Seagulls. I'm on the shore now. The creative possibilities have multiplied not only because of the relative cost reduction of sophisticated hardware and software, but also because of the increase in rapid response time between people in an ensemble or a company. The response time that designers and technicians have in their relationships with directors, choreographers, and composers, and performers, and everybody else. A utopian vision of the ensemble not only being the privilege of actors in the rehearsal room, but also, as I mentioned earlier, embracing complete organisation, is now a real possibility if we want it. But I'm not sure we do. Fluid communication can aid transparency and inclusion, as distinct from hierarchical, director-led methods. A greater sharing of a creative process is happening. Designers collaborate with more people than any other in a production machine. So, communication and its many interfaces, including good old talking and drawing, is the engine oil of a stage designer's work. Efficient flows of information suggest the linear consumption of it. But good theatre design and good theatre experiences can't travel on a one-way ticket. A conversation prompts a sketch grows to a proposal to a negotiation to an action. And the result fills the stage for our audiences. And the audience in turn talks back in a tidal wave of blogs, online journals and tweets. The process is now cyclical and not linear. Technology can intervene at any of these creative stages, usefully or otherwise, and the important factor is appropriateness of that technology. Is it really useful, or are we just addicted to it? Designing with, as distinct from for, propeller is unique and special to me, and the job of the stage designer can easily be misunderstood as a decorator of the event. And 60 years back we'd see decor by on a poster. But it's true that ultimately it's the stage designer's responsibility that everything you see on stage looks right and in the right context. But good design isn't just about visual matters, and the theatre design even more so, in that it affects hundreds of aspects of a production. A plan for arranging elements in such a way as best to accomplish a particular purpose. And that was one of Charles Eames' definitions of good design, or just design. And I think it holds true. It's a disarmingly simple thing to say, but very easy to forget when you're designing. Throughout the duration of a live performance, that purpose is constantly changing. the pace of transformation and revelation, particularly in a propeller production, as the name suggests, is dynamic. Technology has an increasingly important role in developing and launching the design process. These are my costume designs for our production of Richard III. I used a variety of techniques to achieve them after discussing with the performers about the type aesthetic palette and the idea of the formal late 19th century period dress, counterpointing the barbarism in the play. I scanned, I drew, I erased, I drew over the top, skin after skin. The computer allowed me to take conceptual layers, for example, signs of gender, signs of status, signs of power, symbolic ideas, and collage them in a very direct way onto the actors' bodies. This is the costume designed for the actor Richard Clothier, who played Richard III, Duke of Gloucester, the Hunchback. It started with a telephone conversation. He said to me, "You know, Michael, I think he's a fiddler crab." I said, "Yeah, okay, fine. Crab, really?" He said, yeah, but don't think of a crab as a creature. Think of a crab as structure. Think of its asymmetry. It's one of the few creatures that is asymmetry. Other ideas went into the mix, like Nosferatu, Murnau's 1920s film. Not Richard III, this is Richard Clothier, the actor, had a superb idea for the deformed hand. You can see that. A sort of mechanical stump into which he could fit weapons that could be interchangeable. 1 minute a sickle, the next minute he pulled a posy of flowers out of it. This is my rendering for the world of Richard III. I didn't build a final model. You know, designers usually build a wee model. Sometimes it's very wee, sometimes it's bigger, but it's usually that size, and a man is usually, a woman is that size. But I decided not to do that for this one, because I just couldn't get across what I needed the actors and the director to see. So on the first day of rehearsal, what I did was to project images like these along with the costume designs to the ensemble. And it was one of the first times I'd projected the ideas, and it really worked. It seems obvious now, but you know, at the time it didn't. But it got across the impact that I wanted the images to have. And it got everybody into the idea of juxtaposing those 19th century costumes with this more contemporary world of steel. And the important thing for me was that it was a democratic way of showing the work, that it wasn't the lead actor who could only see this little model, that the whole company could see it, and what's more, they could see it in a relationship similar to that the audience were going to see the work in. In other words, big. And importantly, I could light it. In Photoshop, I could light it. Here's the trailer.
Plots have I laid. From forth the kennel of thy womb hath crept a hellhound that doth hunt us all to death. I had an Edward till a Richard killed him. I had a Henry till a Richard killed him. Thou hadst an Edward till a Richard killed him. Thou hadst a Richard till a Richard killed him.
What, shall we stab him as he sleeps?
Oh no, then he'll say 'twas done cowardly when he wakes.
When he wakes?
What is done cannot now be amended. Men shall deem you unadvisedly sometimes, which after hours gives leisure to repent. If I can take the king from your sons to make amends, I'll give it to your daughter.
Planning how the scenography can support this constant change throughout the period of rehearsal and during the intensity of the performance itself is challenging, and it's exciting for me. That's why I do it. I regard design as shaping my process. I design my process as well as shaping the scenery and clothes, and I change this every project. This therefore means designing the roles of the scanner, the camera, the computer into each project and into the collaborative process. In the production process, designers, directors and technicians have to be prepared to be flexible in their approach, even more so nowadays because of the speed of response time that we find ourselves hooked into, and ready to sacrifice their babies to the greater idea of the project, as actors do on a daily basis in the rehearsal room. I trust that actors will finally animate my rather dead world of wood, steel and plastic, and I have to anticipate that. In a true ensemble, the matrix of this change is multiplied and stretched over and over. So, at the start of the design process, at the start of the rehearsal process, my design isn't an original blueprint for the architecture of the production so much as a toolkit with which to build its foundations collectively. Here's car designer Alec Isigonis in 1959, the designer of the iconic British car he designed, the Mini. He's also known for his joke that the camel is a horse that's been designed by committee. I've really never understood this joke. I never understood what's funny about it, because I think a camel is just brilliantly designed for its purpose through evolution. And you can ask any Bedouin Arab about that. Much better than a horse in the desert. My role is to harness the ideas of others and be the design equivalent of the invisible man, aspiring to the maxim that good design is obvious, but great design is transparent. My design has to support live storytelling and not fix an image on the page, but to make it work for the stage. So, my costume designs are not complete until the performer is using it. Those drawings are dead until the performer is wearing the costume. A costume drawing, particularly one that involves an actor changing his age or changing his gender, is simply a graphic way of positioning ideas, posing questions and starting a debate, first with the actor and then with the audience. And the result, though, is hopefully an image that is flexible in performance, harmonizes with Shakespeare's narrative, but is then fixed in the memory. The use of the right computer software helps the decision-making with the ensemble of actors. Comedy of Errors played with Richard III. It was one of those double bill productions that went around the world. So part of the purpose of having a double bill is that audiences can see the company doing two different sorts of work, very, very different, from a comedy to a history play. And so aesthetically, that black and white world of Richard III was transformed sometimes the night after into this Technicolor world of the Comedy of Errors. Here's an example of analog and digital processes. I wanted to take the risk of not drawing the costumes before rehearsal, as with Richard III. So I asked the actors to email me ideas about their character. Only a few replied. So at the start of rehearsal, I hung up plastic envelopes on a design wall for the cast to leave written ideas, images, and then even invited them to draw themselves. I wasn't being lazy. I just needed to know what was in their heads graphically, and drawing's a great way of doing that, getting the ideas out. Gave me much better results. So by the end of 10 days or so, I had a pool of ideas and I knitted them together. And the result was this rather eclectic mix of ideas. So at this point, I wasn't the decorator anymore, I wasn't the designer anymore. I'm not sure who I was. I think the best way of defining it was that I was the director of design, another job title, rather than the designer. Likewise, directors don't always just direct, they're kind of curators of ideas. The process satisfied me for two important aspects. Firstly, the mutual engagement that I had with the new engagement that I had with the actors. It helped me with the fact that I get very bored with my own process, and that's why I keep changing it. I don't do it for philosophical reasons, I just get bored. So I change it every time. It also meant that it reinforced the fact that I knew these actors very well physically. I could work with their graphic ideas, but I knew their bodies so well I could sculpt their ideas onto their bodies, I could hear them as I collaged, and that was very, very helpful. It helped that it was the second production. We did Richard the First, didn't we, Karen?
Yeah.
Richard the First. Karen's the producer of Propeller, and executive producer. And so we'd already been through a production, and I knew these actors very, very well. So I could translate their ideas. Well, I felt confident enough to do that. The computer allowed me to vary my graphic style between the two productions with minimal risk. It was playful, and it ambushed these repetitive habits you get into. And this is the same framework of a set, but transformed into Comedy of Errors, rather more colourful. Steel, shutters, graffitied, very physical set, be crashed into. It's a farce, basically, Comedy of Errors. So this idea of having three doors and an upper level is exactly as the globe is in many respects, the globe, Shakespeare's globe. And I believe the sort of form or shape of stage that Shakespeare would have been working with in his mind when he was working with the farcical situations. So I just simply took that blueprint and then made my own aesthetic version of that. And here's the trailer. These are the same actors that, in Richard III. Ooh, there. Yeah.
Two goodless sons. The one so like the other as could not be distinguished but by name. They say this town is full of cozenage. As nimble jugglers that deceive the eye.
Get you home and fetch the chain.
Dark-working sorcerers that change the mind. Soul-killing witches that deform the body.
How many fond fools serve mad jealousy?
Disguised cheaters, prating mountebanks, and many such like liberties of sin. So blessed power, deliver us from hence!
Very coarse, full of archetypes, stereotypes, but I think caught the spirit of what we were trying to do with the play. Okay, I said at the start I'd try to categorize myself, so here goes. I was asked a few years back to try and place myself in a contemporary theatre context, and I couldn't answer it. I was told that I was good old modernist. I guess because the designs I was best known for looked like an essay in form over function. I think I can have a stab at answering the question nowadays, though. Vitruvius, Roman architect, engineer, author, pronounced the maxim that buildings should embody the qualities of firmitas, excuse me, Latin, firmitas, utilitas, and venustas, strength, usefulness, or commodity, and beauty, or delight. Of these, I think commodity to be the focus of design, as I've said, to fulfill its purpose, and from the original meaning of the word, to be something that offers more than convenience. It gives advantages. Shakespeare recommends focusing on that. Hamlet declares the play's the thing. The designers are there to make it happen with advantages. I therefore consider myself to be akin to the new functionalists in architecture, in that I try to make more of a machine for storytelling. I try to make an arrangement of responsive environments to dramatic moments and feed into our collective memory. In theatre categories, and strangely, looking back at my dual heritage, I'd place myself close to the Czech action sonography group, whereby the actor and not the designer's work is the centre of the visual picture, and that they are seen to be the organisers of the stage and therefore fully in control of its meanings and transformations. My work with performance company Stan Won't Dance is very different in that my collaborations with Liam Steele involve challenging the performers and creative team with physical structures, challenging them, rather than harmonising with the ensemble. That wasn't my choice, that's what the director wanted. He wanted a challenge, and we went for it. Stan Won't Dance was founded as a result of Liam Steele and Rob Tanyan's shared vision of expanding the boundaries of physical theatre, new writing and imagery by creating theatre pieces that integrate movement, design, music and text. Stan being an amalgam of Steele and Tanyan. They are truly transdisciplinary. The production revelations demanded rigorous research of a sort and high precision engineering. The design idea was a response to a domestic drama set in a kitchen, but a kitchen that allowed for a spirit world of some form. I made the kitchen unstable, sloping, skeletal, ghost-like, caught in a global web that contained a battle for the soul. And here are some early concept sketches of the kitchen and an idea that I had to surround it in a sphere. They're just doodles in my sketchbook. But it's a great place to be, a sketchbook. The geodesic dome's relationship to the kitchen interior and then to the audience was critical. A stainless steel spine. Yeah, see I'm kind of the spine through this thing ran through the center. The pole had to be absolutely vertical. One of the fallen angels in the piece had to pole dance. They were pole dancing. Anybody done pole dancing here? How disappointing. I haven't. Yes, you have.
Yeah, I have.
Fantastic. You will know then that pole dancers need an absolutely vertical spine to wrap their body weight around. It has to be vertical. So in and amongst the kitchen and this globe, I had to make sure that the spine was absolutely vertical. I used the gravitational pull of centrifugal force around the pole. I built early sketch models. Here was one of them. I mean, sort of lumpy. Well, they weren't lumpy. I quite like the look of them actually in the end, and I've still got this one somewhere. But it's immensely fiddly, and finally, one didn't have this flexibility that I needed to explore the ideas, and particularly the relationship between this globe, which I wanted to completely enclose the kitchen, and the kitchen itself, this cube, a cube in a globe. The time, the expense, the frustration to find viable ideas of this complexity, or even to begin a conversation with Liam and Rob was immense. Now, I was beginning to lose my patience with the process and almost let go of the whole idea because I just couldn't explore it physically. Physical and multidisciplinary work, such as that produced by Stanway Dance, needs the choreographer and performers and designers to have a special level of trust. The design has to reflect the big idea, but it also has to have an exactitude that matches a performer's discipline. The design has to be as fast and reliable as the movement, for the performer's safety as much as any other reason. This was an immense structure. So I turned to software, and I'm going to try something live now. I don't know whether this is going to work. But here goes. This is my wireframe model, which I turned to rather than the physical cardboard and wire and sticky tape, the Blue Peter version. This is my CAD version, and it was the only way of exploring this relationship between the globe and the points that it touched the cube inside, and I could shrink one to suit the other, tilt, fly through, fly out, do all those things that you couldn't do with a physical model. But importantly, once we'd fixed on this design, and I'm going backstage now, backstage, it was, try and pull into it, it developed what I was talking about earlier, the idea of showing a performer what I do and why I do it, so that they're on board. So I projected this at the start of the rehearsal period, which was a devised show, but that we had to have a structure for because we had to have it in rehearsal. So I could show them this, and I could show one of the dancers what it was like to approach the kitchen from the back. Let me see, where am I? Yeah, from the back. Go into one of these skeletal appliances like a cooker, what it was like, what the view was like when she came out of the cooker onto stage, you know, what the view of the stage and the audience, importantly, the view above her head of performers that were above her on a glass ceiling above, these angels who were above, and the possibilities of going through the floor below into hell below, as well as obviously the conventional thing of showing the director what it would look like from the audience's point of view. Phew, worked. Yeah, that's okay. I have to talk too soon. Here are some stills of the final production. First of all, I collaborated with a draftsman, Will Bowen, and at this point I realised I'm actually a director of design. I can't do the drawings anymore, and it was sorry, it was a telling moment for me because I wasn't in control in the same way as I had been. So I had to work with a draftsman who could work the CAD program properly and quickly responded to my ideas. So these are some of those drawings, and this is these are some images of the final production. I'm sorry, there's a very dark, but there's our pole dancer descending down the pole head first. Of course, as I said, the scenery had to be constructed in rehearsal, in the rehearsal room, because we couldn't just get into the production week without having used any of it. So we had to build it really in rehearsals. However, this design process did have its problems. And this ability to zoom in and out visually on the screen, to fly through in virtuality, distracted us from the audience's actual fixed view that they had. Ironically, much of the production remained too distant. I got it wrong. And spectacular though it was, the audiences were very disconnected from it, particularly from the action on stage, or in the stage, as opposed to around the stage. But we used it more successfully. We used this globe again on the South Bank to open the South Bank Centre when it was refurbished a year or so later, and I'll show the bit of that during the question and answer. I'll just have it playing there. So CAD, I think, should have a warning on it. It should say, danger, virtual reality may warp your perception and working partnerships. And I think there are two traps. This thing of telescoping the view, very, very seductive. It looks really sexy. I think I am pushing it around and you fly in and out. It's great. That's not what the audience's relationship to the piece will be in reality. And what's more, it's crossing the stage's edge, forward, backwards, and it's crossing the spaces where the actors should be, where the actors' voices are, where the music is, where our vision is. it's the currency of performance, and it's fragile, and we need to, as designers, we need to respect it very carefully. The second trap is you can't touch it. It's on the screen. And the one thing the director really likes to do, and I completely understand this, is that they want to get their hands in, and they want to move things about, and they want to make proposals to you, and you make a counter proposal. And they can't do that when it's on the screen, when you have control of the mouse or the pad or whatever that is. So it's immensely problematic to be in screen rather than in the model, in the physical model.
وهذا كالدولة سانتي يحاول سانتي ينتهي ويرسل سانتي تساوي فيتشيرو خطير الكرة سحر أرسنالي شوف اللقطة بالجول هدف ملعوب أرسنالي وصل الفوز أرسنال لم يعد فريقا مغرور نعم أرسنالي هدف جميل يا ولد هدف الموسم يا أرسنال هدف رائع جدا بالجول بالسحر
More satisfying for me watching that over and over and over again, or reading the letter earlier. I can't decide. As a kid, kicking a ball around on my own wasn't nearly as much fun as playing with my best friend. Here's my game. It's my team. Arsenal. I'm a fanatic. Ignore the fact that was a thing of beauty in my eyes. It was graceful, it was balletic, it was live. The ball there, I think, is a metaphor, in my mind, is a metaphor for the ideas that bounce around in a rehearsal room. It requires discipline, but there's a freedom in that movement that you find in a rehearsal room. It's a metaphor for ideas that Etienne Wenger, educational theorist and practitioner, not Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal's coach, would concede, is a model of dynamic community of practice. That was a review. Oh, that was certainly missing the... I'm not sure that's... Well, I'm not sure I would. I'd rather watch the football. I'm with Camus on that one. But it's a nice juxtaposition. This is me, aged 8. Ah. The beautiful game, like a good performance. It relies on both discipline, spontaneity, and again, sheer craft. It's competitive, but it's the beauty of the collective unity and fluidity that feeds my love for Arsenal. Yeah, I love to kick around in the park with my best friend. Sometimes for a whole day, until dusk. We couldn't see the ball anymore. But if the weather was too bad, we'd play Subbuteo. Anybody, is that familiar to anybody? Subbuteo football? It's a thing of the past. Oh, thank you, Andy. It's a thing of the... Yes? Yeah. Okay, Subbuteo. A tabletop game that shrunk our heroics on the football field to the miniature and the virtual. That's not me, it's plucked that on the internet, but it's That's it. And perhaps this miniature parallel universe was why I could easily work in the stage designer's model box. On a Sunday, and not coming from a religious family, we would endlessly recreate last night's match of the day, being our football heroes, the match commentators, the referee, the crowd, everyone. Play acting. But to have a good game, we also had to possess two things. First of all, generosity, and secondly, a similar level of skill. You have to collaborate to play, and arguably, you have to play to collaborate. Nearly half a century on, not quite, I'm not playing as a goalkeeper for England's football team. That dream sadly ended when I stopped growing at 5'8.5". But I'm now playing with my team of director or choreographer. The screen and its image is our imagined stadium. The ball, at least a few years ago, was revolving under the mouse. It doesn't anymore, of course. We both have plenty of generosity. The choreographer Liam Steele shares his drawings with me, and I share my ideas with him. On the face of it, a reverse of roles, but why not? In truth, Liam's books, and I don't have any pictures, I wish I did, are far more exciting than mine will ever be. So, here we sit together in the glowing light of the screen, and here's the point. The skills gap opens up. New technologies require specialist practice beyond the essential act of a good imagination. In the past, designers have spent weeks, perhaps years, on a drawing board and perfecting a model to aid discussion, visualization, collaboration, communication. Edward Hall can only work with a physical model. So I have to work to master both digital and analog for both eventualities. And using CAD in all its forms requires an extra commitment that is in most cases beyond the interests of the director. They can't get their hands in, as I said before. Having said that, the 3D printer is going to change all of it. The whole thing will change overnight. Here are my sketches for Henry V. Plain old doodles. They're only about this big. That's an A4 size sheet. So he's about a centimetre high. So they're tiny little things. They're little thumbnail sketches. And I draw very, very faintly. And we were trying to get the projector to work earlier to make them more positive and more confident, and I'm not confident. So I draw very, very lightly, these little sketches, so it doesn't take any investment on my part, and then I use the computer to draw out the contrast. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse. I'm getting less and less confident about drawing. So the drawings find their way from the sketchbook through the scanner, wrangling ideas as I go. My MacBook is now my friend. I Skype with directors, showing them things live, like drawing ideas, making paper objects, waving my arms around a lot, as you would in any meeting, but across time zones now. And I found other simple but very effective applications. I take a laptop into rehearsals sometimes. I bookmark key moments in rehearsals so I can remember them, and it gives me a sense of the thing in movement, particularly for dance. It gives me time to think and plan as a director. How are we doing for time? Where are my timekeepers? 10 to 3. And you have to go at 3. At 3. Okay, I'm going to go fast. I'll do it for you. It's fine. It's good. I'll make sure you get that. Okay, final thing then. Collaborating with the future. I'll talk a little bit about that. Collaborating with the future. A word about archiving. I'm about to redecorate my studio because I've just moved. It's one of those events that gets you thinking about what a good idea it would be to sort things out, throw things out, and tie up along loose ends. So, some of you may remember floppy disks. Ever seen a floppy disk? I mean, they make marvellous beer mats now, but you know, I have got so much work on a floppy disk, and I can't find a computer to unlock them. More importantly, I'm not sure I care anymore. Does any of my past work matter to anyone but me? One day, all too soon, I won't be around to appreciate it. And what's more, I don't like most of it. Mistake after mistake, a series of missed opportunities. Why review that? God knows why I saved half of it or any of it. I'm not sure what I'm insuring myself against the future. Maybe, maybe not. My children's future, I don't know. Looking back 100 years, we often revere the mistakes of others and the evidence we've got of an artist's quirky squiggles, like David Hockney's. We really cherish it. But he maybe doesn't. It's complex and emotional when you're the grim reaper of your own work. It's cathartic, it's risky, and it's facing the fact that anyone, even my own children, might not have anything but a passing interest in what I've done. Just, who do I think I am, and what do I want to be when I'm gone? The thing is, who else is going to do it? Right here and now. And I think everybody needs to think about this from the get-go. To quote American lighting designer Beebe Seltzer in his witty collection of musings called The Skeptical Sonographer, try to outguess history and you get shafted every time. As sonography becomes more and more recognised as being at least a temperature gauge of theatrical zeitgeists, if not driving some of them, the trace of now, much of it ephemeral, becomes increasingly, possibly not, possibly significant for future generations of theatre makers. I was mistaken, of course. Time doesn't come, it goes, and we have a frighteningly real sense of this as we get older. Of course, time is something that's neither coming or going. It's the people, things, and images within time that are coming and going. Time exists in and of itself. Within time, we're coming and going and changing. What we refer to as that which is transient. It's not time that changes, but the things in it that change. We speak of ephemera because we want to make sense of the world that we ourselves cannot predict in a world that's never constant, particularly in our present culture of change. How should I whiz through this? Last thing. The Buddhist venerable monk, Yuk-sung, a plain-speaking pragmatist and philanthropist, advised that we give all our worthwhile possessions to the next generation while we're still alive, because they're less likely to refuse them. Yet in his will, perversely, with all his sense of humanity, he denied future generations the posthumous publication of his writing and all those royalties that could have done such good. Technology has stepped in. I've begun to archive my work now. It amounts to a shoebox of discs, CDs this time, and a hard drive. I don't have a plan chest anymore. The originals are still important, but these originals are fast becoming digital themselves. Digital originals. That's hard to say. Digital originals. We are potentially delivered from the schmaltz of anecdote, and I, the ruthlessness of impulse on decorating day, however nostalgic I might feel. So the epilogue is, you can go, digital media is now a vital part of our 21st century's need for empathy in a progressively interdependent world. I believe that, not just me. Not just in the rehearsal room either, but across an increasingly compact population. It's been said that a theatre company is a world in microcosm. And if this is a grain of truth, and I sincerely believe it does, with all its utopian promise, occasional dystopian disappointments, revelations, contradictions, a fusion of digital processes and the theatrical experience can help us face in one direction through a common understanding and respect for each other's disciplines, cultures, and both literally and metaphorically viewpoint. Thank you. And that's 3 o'clock, isn't it? Yeah. Just about.
Please do so quickly, quietly, quick. Chair.
Okay. Any question at all? Any of that?
I've got a couple that started off.
Yeah. And just so you know, that what you see behind is Off the Wall, which was a later project with Stanway Dance, and you'll see the globe appearing in that. And in fact, the top of the kitchen involved in it. We harnessed it to the side of the Hayward Gallery. So we sort of deconstructed the Revelations design and then reused it. So it did have an afterlife in the end, which was good because we had to cut it halfway around the tour, as I was just explaining to Andy.
As if they were never gone. Well, if I could just kick off then, Michael, that'd be great. You started off by talking about David Hockney's work, the piece that you have, and you said that he was, once it completed, then his involvement, if you like, was somewhat diminished in the actual realisation of the 3D.
I'm guessing.
You're guessing. Is that the same for you? Do you get more hands-on once you've done your designs and then start to pass it to the company and in the putting it together? Do you find yourself wanting to be involved in that realisation, or do you step back from that and let them do what they do?
I'm getting better at stepping back.
That makes it sound like you feel you should.
An urge. I do have an urge.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I usually, in a project, there'll be a little pet project of my own in it. A little thing, something to make. A prop usually, because it's got to the point where I can't, I just can't make anything big.
Because you don't have the tools or the space.
Yeah, and what's more, people have outstripped me in terms of technical knowledge, particularly. So I can't. I like throwing an idea up because you get fantastic ideas back, rather than feeling like you're having to work within the parameters of your own technical capabilities, particularly. So I'll try and distance myself, because I know that if other people are taking on the responsibilities for working stuff out, they'll usually come back with 2 or 3 or 4 ideas, usually better than my own.
Right.
And that's what directors do, after all. They'll sit in a rehearsal room and inspire and advise and coach and all of those things. But finally, they're being an editor of other people's creativity. And I think like I said, I like being in that position of being a director of design more than feeling I've got to actually get up a ladder and do it. But I get the urge constantly. I have to sit in my hands. It's terrible.
One of the other things, a lot of these first year students, the vast majority of them have had to leave then, are doing this devising module now, where you've got a group of performers, you've got singers, actors, dancers, then you've got technicians looking at lighting and sound and costume and makeup, and Vic is presiding over these different groups of these, working to create a new piece of live performance work. which is quite an eclectic mix, and it doesn't necessarily have a clear head, you know, for that process in each individual group. What advice would you give to these small groups of, you know, people that are starting to work together to create a piece of new theatre in terms of the collaborative approach, you know, the devising approach in that respect? Difficult question.
Well, in a way, but I think I'll probably give a very simplistic answer, which is to read the room, to always be conscious of what else is going on in the room, have ears and eyes, you know, in the back of your head, side of your head, everywhere, because unless you've got that sensibility to what's happening, sort of the mood of the room as much as anything, you're not attuned to it, and I think then you're not so likely to be empathetic towards other people's ideas. So, I mean, it's a really general thing to say, but I think that's
and for a lot,
sort of it.
People hear
And a lot of it's just sort of good manners, really.
The kind of concern has been that it's a strange place to be in the rehearsal room, and starting at the beginning of that process with an ensemble, because most people are used to kind of coming in secondary, going to realise some of these ideas afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think it's finding a role in that rehearsal room. And I was really interested in your sketchbooks, actually, and that you are kind of actually got a role in doing something kind of physically during those times you were sketching rehearsals.
Yeah, when I do, yeah. I tend to sketch out of rehearsal, I have to say, but it's a good idea to keep sketching, however confident you feel, because you're doing something physical, and you're performing actually when drawing is a performance act, and I think that gives you a kind of physical role as well as a conceptual, having ideas, and it helps ideas come out, and it helps you engage physically. If you're not an actor, then it's another way of physically engaging. However embarrassed you might be about what you make, because then they're for you. They're not necessarily to communicate an idea to somebody else. Not always.
I really liked your technique, and I think this is something that you guys could use, you know, in the creation of this process that you're going through now, which was the putting up of the envelope, the clear envelopes on a wall, to try and collate people's ideas about, you know, their character or what they were doing or the way they should be presented.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be a really fantastic, and I think that would give some people who aren't necessarily performers in this whole collaborative practice a real kind of role and a real direction.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
some
and
people
vice
are very
versa.
much performers and don't think about design, so this is challenging for them as well.
Totally, yeah.
I think that would really help to define the process and give it kind of a boundary.
Certainly helped me get my head around those different roles within the same room.
I mean, I regard a drawing as something, or a model for that matter, as something to be negotiated. You make it, you put it out there, you externalise your ideas, and you make them physical. And in doing that, you're offering it over, and you have to be prepared for it to change. And so I don't regard, as some people do, not necessarily those that make them, but those that receive drawings, as being the thing. And it's not the thing. It never will be. This is the thing, and it's just a means to get there. So there's a paradox or a dilemma between this physical thing and the role that it's got. The physical thing looks like it's unfixed because it's physical, but it's not. It's actually it should be very fluid. So I always treat drawings with skepticism. You know, as soon as they come out of the printer, I distrust them immediately, and I'm ready to be challenged. You know, because it's going to prompt, as I said, better ideas from somebody else. Somebody else is going to come up with something that's
very
interesting.
The floor. Anybody else? All questions have been answered that you could ever know.
This was bonkers.
How did you get health and safety to sign off on
Totally.
this? How did you get health and safety to sign off on people climbing that high up on external structures?
I was
How did
offered
you do it?
to bungee off the top, and it's one of my regrets that I didn't
You didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I was just too scared. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
There is on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there.
the
There
one
wasn't
before,
before.
and climbing on the walls and running up that
Yeah.
wall.
yeah,
That was really cool.
great fun. Well, most of the budget went on, sealing off
Crash
the
mats.
area.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you'll see the end is a look at the end.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck to the company for tonight's performance.
Yeah.
Bella. It fits in here. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So these guys have got to go next door now.
I'm afraid, yeah.